Okay, welcome. It's Tony here. I've recorded some instructional videos for you. As you know from my recent emails, I have updated and completed for you the customer pipeline tools that we worked on during the training in June. As you know, there are two versions of it. There's a BD version and an RM version. And within each of those versions, there's also a specific vertical version for your particular vertical, whether it's consumer or digital or airlines. They're absolutely the same, other than the content that's included in them in regards to you selecting your specific customers that you're trying to target, or reviewing the most important customers if you're in the RM sphere. So these videos are, or this video, there'll probably be two, one for BDs and one for RMs, because the customer pipeline tools are slightly different. This one I'll go through the BD version first, and then I'll probably add an additional video for RM. The idea of these videos is to help you understand the customer pipeline tools, how to use them, and what exactly you need to do on a day-to-day basis. So let's dip into the video. This is what you're going to learn over this video. It'll be about a half an hour long. We'll just quickly review the principles behind what we showed you during the training. RAC planning, which I know you've already started to construct with your bosses and your managers. So we'll have a look at the principles behind that, and we'll also look at the principles behind the customer pipeline and just some basics around what it is we're trying to use these tools for in order to support our sales performance. I will then dip into the customer pipeline tool. I've just taken one of the verticals to show you for purposes of this training video. And I'll just show you an overview of each of the tabs, each of the sheets, what they do, what they're for, and how often you'll probably need to dip into them. And then what we'll finally do is run through each of those tabs, show you exactly what you need to complete and how often you need to complete it. And we'll just give you some tips and ideas as to make sure you get the best out of the customer pipeline tool. As I said in the training, anything you do in a sales environment, any time you invest into something needs to give you a return, and this tool will need you to invest some time into it, but I fully expect that it will give you way more out in terms of the intelligence you need to drive your own sales success. So it may not happen in the first month, it may take a few months before you start seeing the output, but I expect it to be something that you previously have not had to use to direct yourself. So let's just quickly remind you on some of the basics. What we showed you during the training is that any sales plan has to have some structure. It should always start with a view of the marketplace, what is happening out there, what customers want from us, what competitors are doing, what the economic and political movements are within our marketplace. And we have to get a sense as to how we direct our resources as a business towards that marketplace, and develop policies and strategies that will take advantage of how the landscape looks for us today in the world of payments in Asia. Now, our policies and strategies may include product mix, may include customer mix, vertical mix, the focus of how we're going to take our products to market, through which sales channels, and how those can be implemented. It could be about winning new business, it could be about pricing, it doesn't really matter. It's any policies and strategies that need to be clarified to the sales organization to ensure that we get the best out of our future sales performance. Those policies and strategies, as I'm pointing out on the screen, need to be reflected in our results targets, broken down to ensure that we have a plan to achieving all of them. Now, those results targets also need to be in line with what we achieved in the past. Now, the past is the past, we can't change it, but it can give us an insight as to what is possible in the future. And those results targets for most sales organizations probably should vary dependent on the individual, their experience, how long they've worked in the company, and the shape and size of their customer pipeline. Our results targets should be backed up by a clear activity plan. An activity plan is the things we can control the quantity of our activity, the direction of our activity, and the quality of our activity, driven through what I'm going to show you from the power of Customer Pipeline. Now, for us to really understand how to make that activity plan, we really need an analysis of what we've done in the past to ensure that what we're putting forward as a plan is realistic and achievable. Now, as you know, currently we don't have a past activity analysis because we've never recorded past activity. And part of our process over the next 3 to 6 months is to capture that activity to ensure that we have better visibility as we move into 2019. And your activity plans are based on your ability to do things, your skills, your knowledge, and your attitudes. And if we're asking you, or you're asking yourself even, to change your result target, and you're changing how you deliver it through an activity, then it makes sense that you have to develop your competencies in order to achieve those activities and realize those targets. And those competency plans can be built based on a look back at what we can or have been able to do previously. Product knowledge, customer knowledge, skills throughout the sales process, understanding of marketplaces, and just also motivation and attitudes. So your RAC plan focuses on this side of this diagram. It is a detail of your results, it's a detail of your activity, and a detail of the competence plan you need to put in place. That RAC plan should be built by you as the individual in association and checking with your boss, and that is a monthly review as to how are we doing against this RAC plan. The customer pipeline, however, captures most of the analysis of results here and the analysis of past activity based on what you've done in the last month. That can be checked against your expectations in your RAC plan. Customer pipeline, as you know from the training, is looking at your total defined marketplace. Where would we like to fish? Where is our pool to be able to fish within a reasonable place where we're going to get good quality business from the customers that we manage or the customers that we win. And because you're working in RM and BD teams, the RM's responsibility is mainly here with our buying customers, and our BD teams are responsible for most of this customer pipeline because they will be targeting suspects, working with those prospects to try and gain new business, as well as being involved in that first period of time when those customers go live before they get handed over to your RM colleagues. And obviously we start out by a selection criteria, ensuring we go after the right things so we get good quality returns from the effort that we put in. We then follow the depth process in steps within the sales process in order to work them through to the buying customers. So our suspects, which are identified suspects not yet worked on, we will have a number of bits of activities that will go on in that part of the pipeline. First of all, qualification and research, understanding people, company markets and competitors. An approach, making contact to try and gain an appointment or a conversation so that we can explore what the customer's drivers and needs are, so that we can establish whether there's an opportunity for us to work with them and demonstrate value in what we can do. Once we get commitment, we understand budget, there's a time scale, and there's a two-way commitment, and there's a definite project that we can deliver, then that customer, that target, suspect, would move over to prospects, where the short-term hard selling will probably happen. Tender proposals, pitches, demos, multiple stakeholder conversations. Building a value case so that we can demonstrate to that customer how Wirecard can deliver on the challenges or the future objectives of that business. Right the way through to pricing and negotiation, and hopefully if a successful sales conversations and sales process has worked, we move it over to the buying customers. And within our buying customers, clearly, we'll have some that are extremely important to us that we can't afford to lose, some that are somewhere in the middle, and some that are perhaps the mass market accounts that there are more of, but if we lost one, it wouldn't be the end of the world. But we certainly can't afford to lose our A customers here. And we need to find a way of defending those, and I'll show you how the Customer Pipeline Tool allows us to do that. So that's a quick reminder of RAC and Customer Pipeline. Obviously with Customer Pipeline we're looking at quantity. How much do we need to go through? How much do we need to pull through this Customer Pipeline? We're looking at direction. Can we improve who we select? Can we make better decisions as to who we drop and who we pursue? Can we make better decisions as to how we manage our customer pipeline? And of course, from a quality point of view, there will be conversion rates throughout this pipeline that will tell us where the blockers are and perhaps what we need to do to make adjustments to competency to improve that quality benchmark. So let's dip straight in to have a look at the Customer Pipeline Tool and show you exactly how it works. So I'll just move over quickly to Excel so I can show you this. Here we are, we're in the Customer Pipeline Tool. This is the BD consumer version. I'm only going to show you this one because it's exactly the same in terms of setup for digital and airlines. The only differences will be what they built, what the consumer team built into their selection criteria. So let's have a quick look at the tabs we've got in here. This is the front screen, which is called Home down here. If you have a look in along our tabs list, this is just the home screen. Now we've built this so that it's as easy as possible to use, but also as easy as possible not to break. So we've made some limitations on the tool so that you can't change anything that might drastically change the outcome. So the tabs we have here is, this is the home screen. I'll come back to it in a minute. If I go to the next tab, here's our selection criteria, which you'll know very familiar from the training course. We then have a summary and chart, which takes the information from the merchant selection, BD merchant selection tool, and lists it in a table and gives you a pictorial version. You'll notice I have updated this so you can actually get 100 customers on this table rather than the 50 that you saw in the training. We'll then have a portfolio analysis, which will start to detail what you're actually trying to sell to these target customers, and you'll see that the customers are replicated on this left hand side. And again, I've added 100 rows to this so that you can get more customers on it. This is something we didn't touch on in depth in the training. I have made some changes to this, and this is quite an important entry point if we're going to get some of the valuable data out of it. And I'll come back in a little while and show you exactly what that looks like in a moment. You then have the probability analysis, which we saw in the training. I've now removed a replication of the customers at the top here. It was felt in the training that you didn't need to have one column for every single target customer, because some may not get to the prospect pipeline, and for some there may be multiple projects involved, and you may wish to assess the chances of winning each of those projects. So now this is totally unlinked to any other part of the tool, and you can just add the customer names in as you go and add the information that you want in the columns project by project. You then have something called dashboard. Now, you've not seen this before, and actually don't need to worry about how complex it looks. I'm going to show you a version of this in a second and show you exactly what it can do. But this will effectively be your readout. This will tell you exactly where you are across the customer pipeline at any one point in time, and it will highlight for you whether, in terms of quantity, quality and direction, whether you're below plan, close to plan, or actually above plan. You'll see those are starting to highlight already with these color schemes here. Now, the reason for these DIVs and for the fact that the equations aren't giving you any numbers is purely because at the moment there's no data entry in this version of the tool, and therefore it's not going to show you exactly where you are at any moment in time. Final tab then is targets. This is some important information that you'll probably only need to enter once at any point, usually at the start of a time period, start of a target period, to allow us to create some of the things you just saw on the dashboard here. It's a benchmark really as to how you're doing against the targets you're set. You'll see from this column here that anywhere it says no entry needed means that you don't need to enter anything, because it brings that information from somewhere else on the customer pipeline tool. But you will see, if you see in green here or in red here, that there are certain areas where you need to enter, but there's not very many, half a dozen at most. I'll talk you through each of those in a second in terms of what you need to enter. So I'm going to move over very quickly into a different version of that tool so that we can show you exactly what it is and how it works. Let's just open that up. Should have done this in preparation. I'll probably edit this out later. There we go. Let's take this one. Now, when you first open the tool, if it gives you this screen here, edit links, update, ignore, just tap ignore links. Nothing to worry about. Just turn those off. So we're now at a slightly different version. It's exactly the same format as I've just shown you. This is my test case, so I can walk you through exactly how the outputs will work for you. So let's take the home screen first. So we're here on the home screen. First thing you need to do when you first receive this particular customer pipeline tool is to stick your name in here. So you can see this little tab here. I'm going to put Alison Liu in there, and that's now going to replicate right away through your version of the tool. And we're going to say that the month at the moment of actually completing this is July, so I'm going to change that to a 7, and you'll see there month in numbers, so September is 9. Every time you update this monthly, put in the number of the month you're currently in. The reason for that is that we're going to work out not just targets and outputs from customer pipeline, but we're going to predict where you're going to be, and of course that prediction will depend on where you are in a particular month of a year. So we'll show you those outputs where they replicate later. You then actually on the front page here have some hyperlinks to go straight to the other tabs that you see at the bottom. So if you want to go to dashboard, you can go to the dashboard and go back home by clicking on the tab. So the hyperlinks highlight here exactly where you're going. So you've got a visual representation here, a suspect pipeline. So if I click you that, it will take you through to the selection criteria tool. So let's go through each of the tools one at a time and exactly talk through what you need to do. Now the merchant selection criteria tool is relatively straightforward for you. If I go back to the original version of that on the consumer pipeline, let's make this a little bit bigger so you can see it. There are selection criteria. These will work through during the training. Here's our criteria levels, so 0 lowest, 1 next highest, and 2 highest in total. So that's effectively means bad, average, and good. So for sales volume, the best situation for this vertical is that the sales volume of the target customer is greater than $5 million US. And you have that replicated through each of these criteria. We then have a multiplier. For this particular multiplier, the multiplier is 3, which means it's the highest of these multipliers, which would tell us that sales volume is one of the most important things for this vertical when a BD is selecting out target customers. And we then look at the actual customers. So here's the customers' names. On this particular row here, I can add a name of a customer into my choice. So if I go to customer 5 here and call this Incel, which is my name, obviously my customer name, that will replicate throughout the rest of the customer pipeline tool. So if we score this, I can just out of a random one say that's a 2. I've got over $5 million worth of revenue. I'm a regional customer, so I'll put a 1 in here. Actually, I've got quite high risk products, so I'll put a 0. I'm a startup, so I'll put a 0. Relationship, well, actually in that case we know the decision maker, and location, we are none of those, so let's put a 0. So my scores, all I need to do here is score based on the criteria here for each of the target customers that I identify. And there are only 6 to this particular version of the selection criteria, so it's relatively quick and straightforward. And of course, if I don't know the answer, the best thing to do is leave it as a 0 or even blank and do some research to try and find out that information that you require. So if I just scroll down here at the bottom, you'll see that this has added up the score for the entry that I've just put in as 14. So that effectively is 2 times the multiplier, 1 times the multiplier, and so on. So when you're using this, you can actually change these. Okay, you can remove those. If you decide as a team that you want to increase, change, add, let's just say we want to put in here, we want to put in that the number of countries operated in is something that's important now to our vertical, so we've added that in, and we'll say that's 5, 4 to 2, 4 to 2 and 1, and we'll make that a multiplier of 2. If you want to do that as a team, you absolutely can. That is something that is flexible within the confines of the tool. Can I ask you though to take that discussion as a team, not just to add your own as you see fit. What you can't change though is if I go down to here and click on this 25, you'll see that there's quite a long, complicated but long at least. What we don't want you to do is to delete that. So if I press delete, you'll get this warning here that says that cell is protected. So you can't delete something from the tool and give yourself a tool that doesn't work anymore. Let's go to the next tab. So summary and chart. You'll see that in cell has already been popped in here in the list. Let's make this bigger, a little bit bigger again. So here's my list of suspects. There's in cell in at customer number 5, and here's the score, 14, and it's telling me that in cell is probably moderate in terms of its attractiveness to Wirecard based on the scores we've given it. Deliveroo's come out red, which means it's probably not perfect for us at the moment in terms of suspect, and Sufil has come out at 25. Now these are color coded in thirds, so the bottom third of the range is red, the middle third of the range is orange, and the top third of the range is green. So if we look down to the bottom of this sheet, we'll see that the maximum score is 26. So anything from say 1 to 10, 1 to 12, something like that. Yes, 1 to 12 will be red, 13 to 24 will be orange, and everything over that would be green. And we can see across the 5 customers that we've currently scored, the average is 17. So not a bad average across the range of those that we've picked. And pictorially, if we have a look at this screen here, we can just get a quick insight into which is the best. And it's obviously that Sofil is the one that I want to make sure I do the best selling on, because that would appear to be much more attractive than the other 4 that are in this list. What else do we need to do on this particular table? Well, what we need to do on this particular table is to add an entry here called month of first explore meeting. So this is really important because this is going to give us some visibility in our quantity of sales activity. So let's say for InSell, the first meeting is this month. So we've met with the customer in July. So all we need to do is add July there in that box to ensure that we keep a track on our activity. And once you've entered July, leave it. In fact, whenever you enter a customer in the sales customer pipeline, once it's entered once, don't remove it, even if you decided to not pursue that customer. So let's say that InSell is something we're not going to pursue. we decide after our explore meeting that it's not worth our while, don't remove it. Leave it in there. You can color code it if you want, maybe put it in red, maybe make a note of it somewhere else. But leave it in there, because if you remove it, it will change the conversion rates associated with the activity we've done on these particular customers. So please leave it in so that you've got that visibility. At the start of the next year or next period, we can readjust and take those things out. Let's say we've met Incel more than once. Let's say we've actually met them 7 times in the space of a month, which would be obviously quite worrying. And we enter that into our equation here as well. So you and the person who works with you, your immediate boss, can review this activity and just question you as to whether that's a sensible use of your particular activity. I would suggest seeing one customer that's not that attractive in the last month 7 times. It's probably a warning sign for you to try and maybe take a different decision as to what you should do with Incel. So there we are. That's the selection criteria and the summary chart. That's pretty straightforward. I think you've seen that from the training. Let's have a look at the portfolio analysis, which is the next tool. So this would only be applicable if those customers here, these customers that we've been selecting and meeting and exploring needs with, have moved into our prospect pipeline. You'll see that they're all listed there anyway, but in terms of the data that's entered here, we only really want to include things that are specifically prospects where we can have a realistic idea as to what they want to buy, how much of it they're likely to spend, or what the actual return, the net income will be on it, and the length of time it's likely to come through. So we've got several little things to point out to you here. First of all, this is our list of customers that stretches right the way down to 100. Here we've got a list of products in areas. So there's POS, e-com, issuing, spelled incorrectly, and anything else in any others. And you'll see areas here where you can add in specific products in these lines here, and that would be a discussion that you would need to have with your particular team to decide what you want to include in there. Let's just add one here. Let's just add in APMs to, that's probably not the right place to put it. Let's put APMs here in ecom, and let's put risk in there, and let's put also, let's just leave it for that for now. So we've got some different examples we can put in. And on POS, let's just put terminals, just for ease of use at the moment. Terminals, and then we'll have terminals listed in that column. So we've got a product portfolio here, which gives us an idea and an opportunity to see not just what customers have we progressed to the prospect pipeline, but also what are we aiming to sell them, where are the needs, how are we ensuring we've got good exposure across all of our products within our customer base and our target base. Now what we've also got up here, if I can bring your attention to this little table at the top here, in fact let's just make it bigger again, is a little key. And in these boxes here, based on these customers, we're going to type in a code here to tell ourselves how we're progressing with these customers across these product areas. Now it may be that, Sophia, you've got 2 specifically different processes in place, 2 different sales pursuits happening, and they're not linked, or it could be that they're all part of one package. It doesn't really matter. So let's just say for Incel, I know there's an opportunity for POS and terminal, so I'm going to put an opportunity in for that. And let's say I've also pitched for some e-com business, and I'm going to write pitched in here, pitch in there, both for APM and risk. And because I've pitched it, there must have been a month where I pitched it, so let's just say we've gone forward in time and it was August, so I'm going to put August in there. So I now know that I first met them in July, but I pitched a solution to them in August. And this is also going to help us with our conversion rates later on, so we do need to ensure we enter that in. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to write in the potential net income for this particular company, Incel, for what I pitched to them, APM and risk in ecom. And we're going to say that's $50,000. That's what's in our pipeline. And you'll see it goes into there, and it would do with all the others. So let's say that with Sophia, we've got a opportunity out there for $37,000. So it's going to start to give us the picture, will give us an overview of the prospect pipeline value, so that we get an idea as to whether we're moving towards the targets we've set ourselves. What it's also going to do is, and this is an important part that we didn't do in the training, it's also going to keep a track of your actual net income from your buying customers. So in your merchant selection here, you're also going to need to add existing customers that you've already landed. Now, in time, of course, they'll already be here from what you've entered in from pursuits that started some time back. But if I just go back to the portfolio analysis, let's say Global eGrow is an existing customer, and actually we know that as of now we've done 67,000 Singapore dollars with Global eGrow. So we're going to add that figure in. So this is where we're going to be able to collect our actual sales value within our RAC plan. Now clearly that figure will probably change. So the following month, let's say it goes up to 73,000. So we're going to keep a running total of our customers' net income value for us, so that we can identify exactly where we are at any one point in time. Now let's just say on Incel, I go to the pitch, but it doesn't quite work out. I don't get the pitch because the competitor came in with a better amount. What I'm going to do here is, if you look up at the top of the screen to the left hand side, is I'm going to enter lost in here, because I need to also keep track of my failures as much as I do my success. So I'm going to put lost there, and you'll see that it will go red to indicate that we've lost that piece of business, and leave it there. Once you've lost a piece of business, leave it there, because it's again going to work out some of our conversion rates that we need, and so we need to be able to have some visibility on it. Let's say though that the risk product that I pitched to them, we actually won that one. We won that one. We didn't win the APMs, but we won it, and it's now gone live. So I'm going to put live in that little box there, and it was worth half of this amount, this 50,000. So I now know that that's going to be 25,000 net income to us. I'm going to remove that away because it's no longer future business. It's actually become existing business. So I'm adding it into that column as and when it comes through our run rate, or comes through our figures for that customer as we go forward. And effectively what I've done there for Incel is I've moved them from a prospect pipeline to a buying customer just by moving them, moving the values from this column into this column. And that's what we need to do on our product portfolio, our portfolio analysis tool. Every time you get an opportunity identified within Explore meetings, pop them in here. As you pitch, as you put forward proposals and tenders, write them in as pitch. And as you lose or win those customers, move them from either lost or live, depending on how you go. And keep a track on the value of those both existing customers in this column, but also those prospect customer pipeline values in this column. Let's look at the probability factors. This is not something I'm going to spend a huge amount of time on. You can change these if you want. These are completely flexible. If you don't like the question, feel free to move them and change them. You'll see that there's no customers replicated up here. Let's just make that bigger. So I could write Incel in if I wanted to, if it was that risk tool that I showed you on the last screen, and I could go through it and highlight exactly the answers to these questions in order to help myself identify next actions in our process of motivating customer commitment. And this is a optional tool. It will not change anything else in the tool. This is a specific one-off analysis tool that you may want to use, particularly if I go back a sheet, particularly if one of these opportunities said January and you still haven't landed it by September time. I might recommend to you to look at that particular opportunity, have a think about what we've done and what we haven't done, and see if that will give us the opportunity to just start the ball moving again, just to move them a bit further forward, or to decide not to pursue it because it's taking up too much of our time. Finally then, let's look at targets first. What you have here is really the back office of the dashboard. So this is going to capture all of our metrics by the work that we've done in all of the other tools that I've just shown you. So it looks at results and activities alone. So here you see these are lists of the targets, or the list of the metrics that are being pulled out of the tool. Here is the data entry. You can't delete any of these. If I go to this one here, which says average deal size, prospects projected from pipeline, if I put my cursor on that cell there, D24, if I try and delete it, you'll see it won't let you because it's a read-only tab. That's because the information for average deal size is taking information from here in the portfolio analysis. It's taking it from this information here and working it out in there to set ourselves a benchmark. So what are the things we definitely need to fill out in this particular part of the tool? Well, right at the top here, it says annual target. I'm going to need to fill that in. I'm only going to need to fill it in once. Let's say for us it's 240,000. You don't need to put the dollars in. It will work that out yourself. And straight away I can see a load of red appear, because what's happening here is all of these metrics are based on the figure that I've just put in targets. If I put 80,000 in that figure, everything else is going red to tell me that all is well. Now that's because if we look at year-to-date sales, which is the second line here, it says 98,000. If I go back to product analysis or portfolio analysis, that's where it's taking that from. Those are the two customers I've said I've sold that much volume to, and if I go down right down to the bottom, it will tell me that figure. There it is, $98,000 being currently sold. So if I go back to targets, it's higher than the total target at the moment of 80,000, and it also shows us why our average deal size at the moment is 49,000 Singapore dollars, which is half, because there's £98,000 sales, 2 active customers. That gives us an average order deal there. But let's say that target is higher. Let's say that's 250,000. Oh, that's million. Now it goes red because it's telling me that currently I'm not where I should be, both in terms of current overall target and where I need to be year to date. So this is year to date sales, 98,000 Singapore dollars. I could add, if I wanted to, a predicted run rate. Let's say we're halfway through the year and I know that 98,000 will, if things continue, will be about double. So let's say there's another $75,000 that's likely to come from that existing 2 customers. So I could add that in, and that will factor it in. The next line is saying year-to-date target. All that's doing is saying this is where I should be based on the current month that we're in. They then have the gap, so the difference between where we are now, what we've booked, what we think we'll book, and the difference between the target. That means we've got $77,000 still to do. None of that needs to be entered. That will all be automatic as long as you add this target in, this information, and complete the rest of the tool. That information will come through anyway. Active buying customers, I have 2, as we saw on the portfolio analysis. There they are. If I go back up, there's my 2 existing customers. It tells me that because I've entered figures in these fields here. My benchmark customers, the number of wins I need, it's telling me that I need to win 5. And that's because here's my average order value, here's my target. If I divide this by this, that's how many customers I need. So effectively it's saying I need that figure to be 5. And at the moment it's 2, which is why it's gone red. My prospect pipeline to buying pipeline benchmark conversion, you can add this figure if you have it. At the moment you don't have it, but at the end of the year you'll have a conversion rate figure and you can manually enter that. So let's say we were looking at last year and our conversion rate from prospects to buying was actually 35%. I would add that in as my benchmark. If I look at the current conversion rate from prospect to buying pipeline, my actual conversion is 40%, and again that's worked out from looking at the rest of the sheets, your activity, and it will work out your conversion rate. Here's my pipeline at the moment. That's how much I've got in my pipeline, 37,000, which I go back to portfolio analysis, is this figure here. We haven't actually got a thing marked here, so let's just say that the pitch is there for APM. So that's my projected pipeline for prospects. Go back to targets. Current number of prospect pipeline opportunities for 2018 is 1. How do I know it's 1? Well, again, if I go back to portfolio analysis, there is only 1 figure listed. If there were several figures listed, let's say I had 10,000 in the pipeline here, let's say for terminals, say op, and I now have 2. So if I now go back to targets, the figure that had current number of prospect pipeline opportunities 2018 now says 2 rather than 1. How many do I need? Total number needed for total prospect pipeline number in 2018 means that this is not just ones that are current, these are the ones that have been throughout the year. So this is the current pipeline for prospects, and this is the total based on the whole of the year. Why is that important? Because if I go back to portfolio analysis, the reason for that is I've had one which I've lost. Now, for conversion rates and for clarity, I need to keep those in focus as well. So if we just go back to target, that's what's going to work out our conversion rates. Here's my benchmark, something we talked about in the training. Probably should have 10 in your prospect for the BDs, 10 in your prospect pipeline at any one time, so that you can keep that sausage machine flowing. Keep adding more prospects to it, give yourself more choice and greater confidence in your success. Suspect pipeline to prospect pipeline, this figure here in line 36, this is our conversion rate from suspect to prospect. It says 300%, which obviously can't really work because that would mean that you saw 1 customer and you converted 3. So I'll tell you why that is. If we go back to summary chart, there's currently only 1 customer listed as being in the suspect or having an explore meeting. If I added some information here, let's say that this is June, and we met all of these customers in June, so we now have 5 customers that we've had explore meetings with, and I go back to the target area from our sheet if I can. There we go. It will now show the conversion rate at 60%. So effectively it's saying that from those 5 explore meetings we put 2 into our prospect pipeline. And if that was the figure for the end of the year, I could use that for the next year. I could change this figure here to act as a way of planning my activity for 2019. Number of targets in suspect pipeline, well, there's only 5 at the moment. Number of customers I've got in my suspect pool tool, which we know because if I go back to our selection criteria tool and I have a look, I can see that there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 customers in total. Probably not enough to go fishing with. And if you remember during the training, we talked about how many suspects do we need in that suspect pool at any one time, and the figures were different. I think for consumers. I think consumer vertical we said 40, so there's the figure there, and that's a figure we can change as we need to. So I think for digital we said it was probably should be about 120 or 100, let's say 100 suspect targets. So I would add the number there to 100, and this is going to take a view on it based on where we are against that. Final few things on this target sheet then. So conversion to explore from initial hook. What we need for that to think about a hook is what I'm doing to try and gain an appointment. It could be a phone call, it could be an email, it could be a conversation at a conference. So if we look at this line 48, hook sent or calls made to gain appointments. So we know we've gained 5 appointments because we've gained 5 entry points to our suspect pool, and at the moment in this version it says we've made 56 calls to gain 5 appointments, which means that we've got a conversion rate of 9%. Let's say we weren't very good at appointment making. Let's change that figure to 400, and we've made 400 calls, or we've sent 400 emails, or we've had 400 conversations, and in that space I've only really got 5 meetings out of it. That would give me a conversion rate of 1%. That would be probably a worrying sign, and that would perhaps lead us to look at some competency support for you. Let's move it back. Let's say it's 40. We made 40 calls, we got 5 appointments, and we've got a conversion rate of 13%. There's the number of explore meetings we've had this period. Those are initial first explore meetings, and we know that from our summary and chart. There they are, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We also know the total number of meetings. Let's add a few things in here. These are the number of meetings we've had with these customers. If I go back to target, it tells me we've had 17 total number of explore meetings, and we've had those with 5 customers. So that gives us the metrics we need to show us how we're doing in a particular year, and that's going to be shown on our dashboard. So if we look at the dashboard now, all that information is giving us a pictorial view on where we are. So here's the month we're in, month 6. If I wanted to, I could add in where we were last year to give me a sense of progress. There's the target that I entered. This was the target I entered in the target field here, just replicated. This is what we've achieved so far. That's the number of active accounts I've got, and that's my average spend. If we go down to this side over here, here's my suspect pipeline. This is the current number of explore meetings or customers at explore meeting. That's how many I need. I need 6. I'll tell you where that comes from in a second. Here's the total number of explore meetings I've had, and that's how many I still need. So that's how many extra we're going to need before the end of the year. Why is it telling me that? Well, if I go back this end first, here's my target. That's where I'm at. I've got £75,000 worth of, it should be dollars worth of repeat business coming back through, which means I have a gap. So here's my target minus this figure, which I've already booked, minus this figure, which we believe we're going to see as a run rate from our customers, and that's going to give me a gap of 77,000 left over. So what does that mean? Well, I have an average spend of about 49,000. Sorry about the pound signs, I'll update these. Which means I need to win 2 contracts. I can't win 1.5, I need to win 2. So the number of deals I need is going to be 2. My current conversion rate from prospects here to buying pipeline here is 29%. So I win 1 in 3 based on the information you've added. Which means if I need to win 2 deals, I have a 1 in 3 conversion rate. It means I need to have about 6 deals in my prospect pipeline. Well, here's the thing. I've got 2 deals already at a value of 47,000, so I need an extra 4 to ensure I give myself enough risk management to get 2 coming through. So what does that mean in terms of suspects? Well, in my suspect conversion, currently we're at 60% with our conversion, which means the 6 prospects I need to have about twice as many in my suspect pool, which means I need around about 12, well, in this case 11. I have 5 already. I probably need another 6, and we base it on 2 meetings for each customer. So if you need 6, probably twice as many to make sure we meet all of the stakeholders. So that's what gives us this information. We can also add here the conversion rate for hooks, so that it tells us to gain these appointments, to gain these 6 extra appointments, how many emails, calls do I need to make per month to achieve those meetings. So in this case, I need to probably plan about 16 emails or phone calls per month to try and get those customers into an explore conversation. And when I look at all of this information, what I can also do is make a final prediction as to where this person's going to finish up, which takes the current activity, and it does say here this is a prediction based on no further activity. So if we only carried on with these 5 suspects, and we only carried on with this pipeline, and we only carried on with this customer business that's going to come in, what is the indication as to where that BD will finish at the end of the year? And this prediction is based on that. So I can do that at any time. It can give me a better prediction the further I go, but the prediction is likely to be a best case scenario for this particular individual. So there we go. So let's just have a quick recap. Here's our back at home. This is where we get all the information in one place. Make sure you put your name in. Make sure you put the month. I would recommend that you save each of your customer pipeline tools once a month, so you have a record of each tool, but you add to the month previously. So you've got the current month, which takes every previous month's information into it, but you also can go back, say, to March's customer pipeline to make a comparison as to where you are there and where you are now. So here's the overall information. Here's my selection criteria. If I want to add more suspects to it, here's my summary, where I'm going to, on a monthly basis, probably on a day-to-day basis, and to enter in when that first explore meeting was, and keep a track of how many meetings I've had with them. In my prospect pipeline, I've got my portfolio analysis, which is what am I selling to my targets, what am I selling to my suspects and prospects. Here's when I had my first pitch, or it first moved at least into prospects. Here's what I'm talking to them about: opportunities, pitch, lost, live. Here's the value of those opportunities within the prospect pipeline, and here's the value of real business that I'm getting from buying customers. And then finally, some of the metrics that drive what's happening in my customer pipeline. And finally, if I add everything that I need to, a readout of exactly where I am, and a sense check, because these things will go green or red depending on where you are against them. And it should give you a quick scan. So anywhere you see red tells you that things need to change. So in this particular example, I wouldn't be worried about quality, because the quality is good. Look, conversion rates are above the benchmark. Here's the current, and this is the benchmark. Wouldn't worry about quality. Here's the direction. I wouldn't worry about average spend. That seems to be a good level at the moment. Where would I be worried? I'd be worried a little bit about quantity, just to ensure that we increase the quantity of our activity, to ensure that we don't finish behind where we need to against target. So there we are, folks. That gives you a quick overview of customer pipeline and the customer pipeline tool for BDs. I hope you found that useful, and any questions as usual, email me, call me, or add something to the Facebook group. If you haven't joined that yet, please send me your email that you'd like an invite to, and I'll send it across. Thanks very much.